Alright, today what I kind of want to do is work on the foreground. Bring that up a little bit and so that everything's kind of coming up at the same time. Let's see. Now if I'm going to start out with my number 4 flat bristle brush, just to if it doesn't work, I may switch to something smaller. But what I want to do now is kind of put maybe not the brightest highlights on these rocks, but a next level of that. Now what I'm going to do is I still have that pile of soft white that I mixed with the little touch of orange in it. I'm just getting out a dabble board here so that you can see what I'm gonna mix. So here's that soft white that I have. I'm gonna pick up a little bit of burnt sienna and some more orange. See if that's gonna be what I want. You know, I go in and I make adjustments for things. It's not bright enough. Let's see what a little touch of yellow does. A little more white. A touch of water. Kind of a mustardy color. Bring it down here. Test it. Okay, I think that's kind of what I want. So I've got my white, burnt sienna, and orange, and a little touch of yellow, and some water. You want this to be kind of like soft butter. Scoop that off. And now when you're doing rocks, especially small ones like this, don't try to paint individual rocks. Look at the jumble that you have. If you were doing that kind of scumbling and just dabbing and creating some texture in there, that'll give you some clues. So, just put in some of that. Look for places where you can just kind of hit the surface of that. I'm just making little quick marks. There's going to be flat rocks. There's going to be a bunch of little rocks. Some will be standing up. Others will be laying down. They just kind of come in here and dump these rocks. There's no kind of rhyme or reason for them. I'm going to pick up just a little bit of my cadmium red and mix down into that. So now I've got the orange, the yellow, a little bit of cadmium red, because just to give it a little bit different flavor. Everything does not need to stay the same. These are rocks from all over. But they just kind of came in and dumped, and there's probably local rocks and stuff that they brought in from a quarry someplace. Now as it goes out, these rocks kind of get a little bit smaller. One, they're going away from us. Two, I think that they are a little bit smaller. Also, the water comes in and splashes up on them, changes their color a little bit. And remember that this is going to dry a little bit darker. Sun's coming in from the left. I'm looking at my reference here. Gets a little bit darker out there. Now, one of the things you can do to make it end up a little bit darker is to just add a touch more water to it. Add a little touch more cad red and a touch more burnt sienna. Make it just a little bit darker. This is the wetter rocks. I will come back in and add some shadows in some of these places. These are kind of far away, so I don't need to be too exacting. It's just a pile of rocks, pile of shapes. Let's stand back and look at this a little bit. Oops. Blame the cat. Let's soften this. Okay. Now I know that on the surface of that there is it's flat, so it's got the tarmac and whatever on there, but I'm just gonna. I went back to some of that lighter color, a little touch more white in it. Okay, now, and I want to make sure you see that, you can see all the colors I've put in there. You see the dark color in here. Some of that's going to end up being shadows and just a darker color. Then I've got the middle tones and this first stage of highlights. To that color, I'm going to add a little touch more orange and yellow, a little bit of that white, and let's see if that's going to be the color I want up here. Add just a touch of water to that. I'm just kind of touching this. Just in spots. This will dry a little bit darker. These cliffs can get a real sunny look on them. And I am kind of going sideways on some of this to just suggest some of that layering that's there. Just, the sedimentary rocks. Adding a little more orange. I don't want anything hard or definite back here, so just I come in and just soften. Just touch it with my finger. Kind of drag it on there too. A little dry brush. Let me stand back and look. I'll probably come back in and add some to the trees, but I think I'll leave that for now. A little touch of that color with a little more of that white. Just touch. Don't make a solid color back in there. Okay. And last but not least, I want to take and work a little bit on the sand in front. I'm going to use my yellow, little burnt sienna, little touch of blue, and some alizarin crimson, I think. Let me look at that. So we're having a dabble board or something that you can test your colors out on. Okay, that's not bad. I'm going to add some white to it. Okay, so it's kind of almost a fleshy color. A little water. Yeah, okay. So that's basically all my primary colors. When you want mud, you've got to have all the primaries. So it's cadmium yellow, little burnt sienna, little blue, little alizarin crimson, and white to change the value. I'm going to kind of wipe my brush out and then just skim this. Leave these little pockets of darkness in there. That becomes the texture of the ground. As I come down towards the water, maybe a little flatter here, but then I angle my strokes down because the land does go down as it goes towards the water. The But this is dry brush. What I'm doing right now is just dry brush. It's very little paint on my brush. Pick up a little bit of burnt sienna and blue. Work that into my brush. I want it just a little bit darker here in the corner. This is a vignette, when you just kind of darken the corners, that focuses the eye in towards your painting. Okay, now you probably see that I've put a mark here. Been looking at that horizon. It's just a little bit low on this side. So I want to get that done now, mostly because it was annoying me. Now I'm just going to take my ultramarine blue, little touch of my hooker's green, and a little bit of the, I still have gray I mixed on my palette. That was the ultramarine blue and burnt sienna and gesso. Makes a real nice gray. Maybe a tiny touch of alizarin crimson in there, just to make it a little more purple. Now again, I'm using this is my number 4 flat bristle brush. I'm going to kind of wipe out, and then right here at the bottom, I'm just on a more dry brush. Just kind of skim the surface right up to my new line. And just kind of work that color down into that back water back there, and then when it dries, I'll take off what's left of the chalk mark, or soft fine charcoal, but that'll straighten it out, and maybe I won't obsess with it when I'm looking at it. So now what I want to do while we're still in this area is that I want to work a little bit more on the water. That same color that I just used, the blue and the green and the, well, I'm not going to use the white because it's closer. Let's see. So I'll show you what I'm mixing here. Here's my ultramarine blue and my hooker's green, which is the darker of the two greens. It's also a little bit cooler. Let me test this up here. Yeah, that'll work. Now, if it, everybody has their own preference on things, and if you want it to be just a little less colorful, just add a touch of that gray into it, or a little touch of burnt sienna, because both of those will kind of gray and soften the colors. Now I'm just going to come in while I'm thinking about it. Up here, I'm going to be making little U shapes like this, and they're going to overlap, and I'm going to like taper them off so that they kind of just flatten out. Because if you look at waves, a lot of times they just kind of have a little bump in the middle of them, and they just taper out. But that U shape is going to tell your viewer a lot of information, that it's kind of going up the side there. Added just a little touch of water, but this is so small, it's kind of hard to see. It's a little taller there. I'll come back later and put a little bit of highlight on that. Kind of smooth the bottom out with my finger. Just blend it into what's there. There's a little small ripple here. Sometimes just little touches across. I'm looking to see where I can put some of these in. And sometimes those brush marks that I've already got in there tell me where I can put it in. Nobody's going to come in and you know, double check if everything is the same as in the photograph. You get to make some decisions here. When I was doing this, I saw a little place where maybe there's a little bit of a wave come up here around these rocks. Now in here, I'm going to just kind of rock it back and forth. This is more of a trough than a wave, but I'm just kind of making little U strokes. I'm just scumbling in some of this dark color just to add some texture, add some dark colors in here. This wasn't exactly a choppy day, but there were a lot of little wavelets and things going on. Right behind this, there's another little wave coming in. Remember, if you have to pick up water, just pick up a little bit at a time. I'm just remixing that color. Try to make sure I stay in where you can see this. Soften out the bottom. As I come into those rocks and stuff, there's probably more stuff underneath. And so that's why they kind of build up and break where they do. It's just some texture. Now I'm going to switch colors here a little bit. I'm going to take my ultramarine blue and some of that soft white that I made. That's the white with the little touch of orange in it. And I'm going to do a similar thing with this color. So this is the color that I'm using. It's a lighter version. And I'm just going to come in and just, these, like at the top of some of these, I can just kind of touch it, maybe a little more white. Added just a tiny touch of green to it. Let's see. And tap it. I'm just tapping across. Not sure that shows up. Oh, it shows up okay. This is kind of like the highlight or the foam that's on the top of these little waves that are coming in. Don't make it a solid line. I'm just using the tip, where are we? Tip of my brush and just kind of tapping. So it's kind of an uneven color. Come in here and just kind of put some of that light in. Again, I'm making like little long banana shapes in here. Water is an interesting thing. I'm getting better at it. Maybe a little dry brush in here. But water seems like it should be an easy thing to paint because it's all just laying flat, but that's not necessarily so. Take a little bit more of the white into the blue. You know, that light blue, and just touch. Can even kind of pull some of it over like it's turning into foam. We'll do that a little bit later. Create a little more foam on some of these. Now down in this area, as I'm looking, it's a little bit more on the purpley pink side, which is good because I can now repeat some of this color that I put up here. So I'm going to take my alizarin crimson and my ultramarine blue and that soft white that I had. Make it kind of on the lavender blue side. It'll have enough of the pink in it. Okay, so there's this color that I'm working on. Again, this is going to be dry brush, so I'm just going to wipe out my brush, pull it up here, and I'm just going to skim the surface of this. And I'm kind of going downhill because this water is flowing back down towards the ocean. Putting layers on might seem kind of tedious, but what you get at the end is kind of worth worth the trouble here. Just reloading my brush. Back here it's a little flatter. Because now you've got all of these colors that we've been putting on. We've got the blues and the greens, the browns. Now this lavender color. And like with a watercolor, you don't judge an acrylic when it's still wet. Give it a few minutes to dry, because it will change to a little bit darker version of what you put in. I'm just looking. Okay, I'm going to go back to that light blue and just kind of soften some of these just by putting a little bit of color there. And this does tend to be I didn't clean my brush, so it is a little bit more purple. But this is just to kind of soften some of that dark that I put in. Okay, what I want to do now is just kind of I'm kind of trying to get you guys ready for the next week or so, where we start putting in any detail that we want. Now, some of you may not want as much detail as I might, or somebody else might. But I do want to get the last little bits of some of this other stuff done. So I'm going to work up here in the trees, and I'm going to use that same mixture I've been using, the Hooker's Green, and I'll bring this up. So that's the Hooker's Green and the blue. But this time I'm going to add just a touch of burnt sienna to it. That kind of grays it. And I'm going to add some of that gray. Some of that light gray that I had. I'm going to be using this kind of create some suggested highlights on those trees in the background. So that's the color I'm going to be using. Mix it up down here so I have it. So it's Hooker's ultramarine blue, little touch of burnt sienna, and a little bit of that soft gray. I'm still using that number 4. Wipe out my brush a little bit. Let me test this. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit more gray. Now these trees are way in the background. You're not going to see a lot of detail on them. So don't get carried away with detail. I will do a little bit more when I get to like palm trees or something. Let me shut this down. Okay, yeah, that will work. Now remember, the light is coming in from the left-hand side, so when you're doing this, kind of leave some of that dark. I'm using the corner of my brush, and I'm just kind of tapping, overlap, connect. Kind of roll my brush in my hand. This just gives a little bit of texture to this. Don't make it into regulated clumps. I see that a lot. people, it's a normal human thing to want to make things in line and, you know, all lined up and same size, same shape, but that does not work when you're painting nature. Going to add a little bit more gray and burnt sienna to that. I want it just a little bit lighter. Go up here to the, let's see, test this out. Yeah, it's just a little bit lighter. Go up into the cliffs here. And just touch. Add a little touch of water. Come over here. Same thing, I'm just kind of touching. This is coming down the hill, so I can kind of like drag that color. This is some kind of weed that goes all the way down to the bottom. Just touching a little bit of that same color on just a few of these. It'll just brighten them up just a skosh. Oh, one of the things I did forget is right back here there's a plant. So I'm just going to take my blue and hooker's green. Just the blue and the hooker's green, nothing else into it. And right behind these rocks, there's, I don't know what, little land or something, but I'm just going to put in this little bush, and I'll let that dry. And that'll kind of separate the foreground from the background. I'm just looking. Move this back a little bit. Now I want to, and I may change my mind later, but for right now I kind of want to see how this water is going to start working out. So I've got to get something in to suggest the foam. Now whenever you're painting something white or light, you've got to have some dark underneath it. And so I'm going to go back to that soft white that I had, and I'm going to make up a lavender color. It's going to be a little bit lighter than what I was using before. So that's the soft white, the gesso or gesso, either one, the ultramarine blue, and a little touch of alizarin crimson. But you want it to be much lighter than what was there, so that when you put your highlights on, this becomes the shadows in the highlights. On my board. So let me test that up here. A little bit lighter. I'm just working down here on my palette so that I can get. Okay, that's pretty good. So it's going to be this light lavender color. But to give depth to your, to your foam, or this works with anything white. If you're doing like white material, or like tablecloth, or something white, even the clouds. These aren't really white clouds. These are gray clouds. But that's where you need to start. Is at this gray. Now I'm going to come in with this gray or this lavender color, and I'm going to kind of doing a couple of things. I'm kind of dabbing for where the foam is, and then I'm just going to lightly pull it back. That's where it's, where it's kind of the foam is going off into the water. It's a little bit dry, so I'm going to add just a touch of water into that. Don't make it all even. Some of it will be thinner, some of it will be thicker. It'll get a little bit thicker as you go come forward. This actually kind of goes up a little bit right here, because this little ridge that I put in. Can you see that? That is a swell that's coming in. So now this foam is going to kind of go up that foam. I will be putting shadows underneath this. There is like another little, now if you need to, I had these in here before and I've kind of painted them out. But you can use your soft fine charcoal or something and create a foam line so you know where you're going to go with this. And there's some more foam, but this is kind of the main foam here. This is smaller because this is a wave that's already crashed and burned type of thing. And I'm just kind of patting this on. This kind of goes back into the water behind it. And don't like I said, be very careful not to just draw a line with this. This is going over rocks and who knows what else here as it's coming to shore. It gets a little bit thinner back here. Just adding some of that just surface. Huh? Okay. There's a little crashing wave back here. You can make the waves crash around some of these rocks if you want to. But, you know, underpaint them with a little bit of this. I'm just ad-libbing here. I'm sure that this probably happened at some point in time. So this is where I'm going to leave you for this week. So, you know, try to get your painting up to this point.